Hi, everyone. I think I've worked out all my glitches for tonight. Oh my goodness. Not sure if anyone is there yet, but welcome, whoever's there. Just going to move this back a little bit. As you can tell, I'm still very new to live streaming, and it is a bit of a challenge. Okay. All right, so welcome. Tonight, I'm going to share with you about my tarot journey and how I started working with the tarot and how that all came about. And I thought I would do some demo readings tonight, as well as kind of go through the way that I read and really go through in a step-by-step process how I work as a reader. I've um, I've noticed over the past, I would say, I joined what's it called, Tarot Nerds on Facebook not too long ago, and it's really funny actually. Hi, Laura Lee. Actually, not one of the founder of Tarot Nerds actually lives in my town here. It's just such a small world. But there have been a lot of posts about how to read and how do you memorize all the cards and how does that all happen and how long does it take, and what is your method for learning and for memorizing all the meanings and the symbols and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I just keep commenting on, because there's a lot of different threads with this very similar question, is practice. It's all about the practice, 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 practice. And you cannot practice reading enough. And so I thought tonight I would just share with you some of my methodologies of practicing, and hopefully you can share some of your tricks as well too, because I'd really like to I'd like to know, you know, what you're doing as far as working as a reader, if you work professionally, if you just read for yourself. Let's have a little bit of that conversation as well too. And for those of you that are watching after the fact, let's again carry on this conversation in the chat below, because it's really important, I think, to feel supported. And the YouTube community is amazing for learning tarot and being able to ask lots of questions and quickly get access to resources. When I started my tarot journey, I believe it's hard for me to actually remember. I think these were the first tarot cards that I had. And I purchased this kit because it had two different decks in it. I really didn't know what I was doing. And I tried to scan this into my library app, and there's no ISBN on it. So this was before ISBNs were even on these things. And I don't even know what year that started. So in this amazing little kit, I won't say it's amazing, but there's a well-worn book here. And in this book, each of the cards has a little bit of a description for the Thoth version, as well as an RWS version. And inside the box, there is a version of the Celtic cross. So you get this sheet. And I don't think I ever used it because it looks really clean and neat. And you also get this little cheat sheet, which I never used. And then there's this tarot journal, which comes in here, which is kind of cool. And so I did some work in this tarot journal, but not a lot. I really, from the very beginning, started to stray in my own way. And in this box here, you've got a Thoth deck, a small version, as well as a small RWS version. I haven't pulled this out in ages. So, Laura Lee, do you read for other people? So yeah, so this is the traditional backs. Yeah, and it's not very well worn. I hardly use them at all. It was years. Sorry, it wasn't long before I went to Robin Wood, and Robin Wood was the deck that I used for a very, very long time. So yeah, so that these were the cards that I started with. But that's not really my story. So why did I get into the tarot, and kind of how did that all happen? And I know I've sort of shared this story along the way, um, in bits and pieces, but not completely. So I'm going to just kind of go through that again tonight. I have 4 children. And when my third child was young, so I'm going to say around 3 to 5 years old, I became aware that she was quite disturbed at night with her sleep. And it was when we moved to a new townhouse that I really began to kind of be aware of what was going on in her bedroom. And the fact that she was really, really upset at night. And being the kind of person that I was, I didn't dismiss this to night terrors or just childhood monsters under the bed kind of thing. I really gave her experience due consideration. And I was pretty ill equipped to deal with this. I really didn't know what to do. I had always been kind of intuitive and very sensitive to energy and light. And I remember as a child myself sitting in my bed and being kind of in another place, another world, and being able to remember my dreams and experience all kind of, lights and colors when I was in a sort of a daydreaming state as a child. But it was not anything I ever talked about with anybody. Nobody in my family did any kind of spiritual work or work with the tarot or anything. I had nobody to talk to. So these experiences just kind of happened, and I didn't write about them. I didn't share them with anybody. But I knew that when these experiences started happening for my 3-year-old, I think she might have been somewhere between 3 and 5 years old, that it was time for me to kind of step into this world. And mainly for yourself, and for your son. That's lovely. So what I did was I contacted somebody who was doing readings in my community. And at that time, so this is before YouTube, this was probably around, I'm going to say 1999, 2000. So just under 20 years ago. And she was probably advertising in the newspaper. And I called her and I made an appointment to go for a reading. And this was the only person that I could think of that I could kind of begin this journey. And so I went to her a few different times and had several readings. And it was just lovely. I liked how she had a few different decks on the table. I liked the way that she kind of smudged the table. And I wasn't smudging at that time. I had no altar. I was doing nothing. There was no kind of spiritual experience in my home at that time. And so I very, very slowly, I guess you would say intrigue. I was really intrigued with the cards. I was really intrigued with the readings. I was really curious about how or why she let me choose which deck I wanted to use for my reading. I don't really remember the content of the reading, but I do remember feeling really supported and heard. And at some point during the reading, we talked about all kinds of, maybe after the reading, we talked about UFO experiences in the community. We talked about residual kind of imprint energy. We were in a kind of a mountain town, and she felt that there was a lot of imprint from kind of that pioneer kind of energy. And so my daughter might be picking up on some of that as well too. And we began to develop this relationship. And just from that first reading and connecting many, many times over the years, I began to explore the cards on my own. And then I would go back to her and I would go and have other readings and work with other readers. One day there was an event organized by this woman in town, and she had placed readers at various locations all over town, in different hotels, different hotel lobbies. And I really, really enjoyed that event. And I remember one particular reading. The reader was a lawyer, and she had not come out of the tarot closet. She was doing this very much on the side. And I don't know why she shared as much as she did with me, but it was pretty interesting. And she just, throughout the reading, kept saying to me, "You are supposed to be doing this. You're supposed to be doing this." Again, I don't remember what the cards were in the reading, but she just kept feeling like for some reason I should have been on the other side of the table and that I would have no problem at all kind of picking up on this. And so I just began to, and I did not have a large collection. I did not have a collection of cards. All I had were the two decks that were in the box that I just showed you. And then I went to a metaphysical store in Vancouver called Banyan Books. And even in those days, Banyan Books had a huge wall of tarot cards. And it's one of those stores where every single deck pretty much had a sample deck so you could go through the decks. And that's where I found the Robin Wood Tarot. And it was probably that same visit to that store where I picked up the Robin Wood book as well too. And this is, I don't know if you read in the bathtub. I love to read in the bathtub, but I can tell that this book was well read, well read in the tub. And I found Robin's approach very liberating, and just the way she was so open in sharing her story, with the way that she created the cards, with the way that she read, how she repeated multiple times throughout the book that this is just her interpretation and that it's really important to be in the experience of the reading. And so that's what I did. And I just began to practice and keep journals. And as I kind of outgrew this book, but I won't say I outgrew it. I've recently gone back and over the years have reread different descriptions of different cards and whatnot. It's a pretty special book. And she mentions in this book about another book that she was going to write, or a workbook that she was going to create and have many more spreads. But I don't think that book ever happened. But it's a really, really good read, and it feels personal. It's not dry at all. And I find that a lot of tarot books just have way too much information in them. And so I just really appreciated, while there's a lot of information in this book, it wasn't one of those books where you just feel inundated with just so much stuff. And so it was definitely manageable. And of course, I love to read. I love books, and I was always on the lookout for other books. And this is one that I picked up but didn't find very, very useful. It was one of the only ones in a bookstore in the town where I lived. And I think the reason that I picked it up was because the illustrations were from the Robin Wood Tarot. And so I felt connected to this book. But it wasn't until I found this one that I really began to kind of move in a different direction and to deepen my perspective and deepen my just practice and awareness. So in this book, Isabel Rado Kliegman, and this is only about the minors, this book goes into a lot of detail about the tree of life. And she talks about chakra associations, and she brings in lots of different layers and levels of information. She does a beautiful description of each of the court cards And this was a book that I studied from cover to cover and really, really spent a lot of time with. It was a really helpful book. And, it's kind of all a blur how it all happened and who I started reading for and all of that. Yeah, Laura Lee, I think at times, I'm just going to expand the screen, we all feel a little lost and a little overwhelmed. And I would really encourage all of you who are just finding me for the first time and just listening to my story here to go to the very first of my series of deck combo videos. Because in those videos, I do a lot of sample readings, and it's a really good opportunity to hear how I go about reading and just the way that I allow the story to evolve. There is somebody on YouTube who's really quite funny. I found a couple of years ago, and I'm sorry, I can't remember the channel name, but they're really, really good at kind of describing the storyline. And I'm going to talk about a few of the different techniques that I do to kind of work with that and how I open a new deck and exercise a new deck. So yeah, so I had those two little tiny decks, the RWS and the Thoth that were in the kit. Then I had the Robin Wood. And as I began to explore Isabel's book, I don't know how the Osho Zen Tarot came into my awareness, but it definitely was a deck that intrigued me very, very much. And I always had an interest in yoga and that kind of thing. And it was a deck that connected more in an energetic way than in a traditional tarot way. And I was very, very curious. So the book that comes with it is quite different than the extra book that comes with it. So if you buy the Osho Zen that comes in it's like an old video case. I don't know if it's still packaged that way. There is an additional guidebook as well too, and the information in the additional guidebook is quite different from the one that comes with the deck. And both of them are excellent, but they both just have so much kind of deep insight and information. And so that's kind of how I began. And they were very, it's a very different approach, but it gives you. I should have brought my Osho Zen over to where I'm sitting right now. It is like it's a different approach, but it's the same. It's very, very much. And I did a video on it was a VR to Kelly Bear during one of I'm not sure. I think it might have been during and not this year, but last year's Tarathon. She talked about the Osho Zen and the Osho Zen being an RWS deck, not being more of an Oracle deck. And I did a VR to that. And so if you might want to watch that video, and I can put a card up on the screen for you. But it was just a really good way for me to begin to expand my repertoire. And I had no intention of becoming a card collector. I had no intention of any of that. It was just those 2 or 3 decks that I had, and that's what I used for readings. And I did readings for friends and for family. I did a lot of readings for myself, and I practiced. I always loved shuffling cards ever since I was a kid, so that felt kind of natural. And it was just it just felt right for me. It was something that felt truly, truly right. Then there was a bit of a gap. So I'm not sure what happened. The cards were not very apparent. Oh, I should go back to my daughter, because that's, I said, how this all started, and I was trying to understand and work with her. And so working with the tarot and beginning to connect with a metaphysical community, I had support and I had resources. And I also went to some mediumship workshops and mediumship evenings in town. And that was the way for me to just really begin to tap into what I already knew was available to me, but also to find some resources for my daughter and support for my daughter. And it was just a really beautiful experience. And so, through connecting with mediums in the community and other people who were interested in this kind of stuff, I just felt supported and I didn't feel so lost. And I knew if I had questions that there were people to go to. And I think it is really important, when you begin to walk this spiritual journey, that you find your people, because it takes years to come out of the spiritual closet. At least it did for me. And because you always feel a little bit different. And I guess I'm speaking from my own perspective. I felt a little odd and it took time. And I would encourage you to go to as many different retreats and workshops and meet real people, not just connecting with people on YouTube. And sometimes that takes a little bit of bravery and a little bit of legwork, to really find your people. So yeah, so that was my support, and I kind of, the level of fear that was associated with whatever was going on with my daughter just kind of dissipated, and it was completely manageable. And my husband at the time, who was quite analytical, intellectual, I didn't really share much of this with. Of course, he was aware a little bit, but it was not anything that was kind of on the table in the family. Like I wasn't doing readings on the kitchen table, and I wasn't, it wasn't, it was something that I did in my own space when the house was quiet and nobody else was around. And that couldn't have been too often because I had three young children at that time. So my first three kids were really close together. And then my fourth child came along 10 years later. So that's why I got into the tarot. And yeah, I just found the whole idea of a community to be really beautiful. And that was it was a different experience for me because I played tennis. I was involved on different boards and clubs that my kids were active in. And it was just something completely different. And right from the get-go, I felt like I belonged and it was a good place for me. Yeah, Laura Lee, I totally understand. It can be, really, really tricky. And if you live in a mainly Christian town, it, I mean, I'm sure even in your town, there are other like-minded people. It just takes time to find them and to always have your kind of your ears and your eyes open. And if you're able to, if you see anybody like posting about readings and just being really curious and not even necessarily going for a reading, but just going to chat or go for a coffee, it can be can really be really beautiful. Yeah. So that's kind of how it started. Then, more recently, um, I'd say in the last, so my youngest daughter is 12. Um, since she was born, my life kind of took a different turn. And that's when I really got into my yoga teacher training. And I went to India a few times and I started really diving deep into my spiritual journey and studying Reiki, became a Reiki master, did lots of training with different teachers and that. And I I think I was doing this for myself, but also for the healing of my relationship with my husband at that time, because I really believe that if you work on healing yourself, you can heal your relationship, you can heal your marriage. Hi, Leann. I'm just discovering that I need to come out. The difference is that I have a former life of Bible thumping, born again Christian. And I think really it's just about giving yourself permission and take it in baby steps, be kind to yourself and do it, as you are ready. And so this whole journey for me in kind of evolving and accepting my spirituality and exploring my spirituality, and I always, wanted to do yoga teacher training, but I wasn't allowed. My husband wouldn't let me. And it wasn't until our marriage was pretty much dissolved that I actually started to do all that stuff and gave myself permission to do all these things. And right away, I was so lucky. Right from the get go, of course, there was lots of like power yoga, teacher training, and that kind of stuff. I found a beautiful spiritual yoga teacher connection, and it made all the difference to my journey. And I feel very grateful for that because I was able right away to begin to weave what all these different bits and pieces together. And I think that's what makes me unique as a reader, is that when I'm doing a reading, I bring in so many um, so many different kinds of disciplines and different experiences. And I think the person on the other side of the table really really feels that. And when I was at a psychic fair last weekend, I think it was last weekend. um, I This was the first time actually that I had done a public kind of psychic fair where I felt completely empowered, and I had limitless energy, and I did reading after reading after reading. I never had a break. I had my kettle on the floor beside me, so I was drinking tea the whole time, but I just felt energized. And you know what I think the big secret is that you need to step out of your own way, and you need to allow these readings to just whatever's coming through on the cards on the table to begin to flow through you. I think what happens is we forget what oracles are, and maybe I can just kind of touch on that a little bit now. So what are tarot cards, and how do I see them? Like what what maybe I should tell you how I do a reading, because that might really help. I'm just opening up the textured tarot. It's a really beautiful deck that you can use with lots of different people. Um, it feels it feels like it has good diversity, and I don't think there's um, naked any nude images on it. I'm not sure. I can't remember. It just feels like a real good accessible deck for a lot of different people. And so I'm going to do a few different readings today. So if you would like a reading, you can let me know. Um, so when I do a reading, I start by just checking in with the person across the table and ask them how I can be of service. I also want to come back. I'm just going to make a note too about an exercise I want to talk about in learning to become more fluent in reading. So I will do that. If I don't write it down, I might forget. So I check in, ask them how I can be of service. And I used to go through a whole ritual with smudging and inviting in spirit and doing a prayer and all that kind of stuff. I don't do that anymore. I just invite the person to be quiet and remind them that every single thing I say is an invitation. They don't have to do it, because I don't know, if I haven't seen them before, how comfortable or uncomfortable they are with this experience. Even if they tell me they've done this before, um, you know, I don't know what has happened, in previous experiences. And so I do a grounding meditation and connect them very much to the earth, and just help them to relax in the chair, get them to relax their body, connect to their breath. And while I'm doing this, it's all completely ad lib. It's slightly different every time I do it, depending on the person. I am an empath, so that means I feel things in my body. So as I am taking them through, their legs and connecting to the earth and so forth, I begin to feel what they are feeling. And usually depending on what's going on, I will go through a scan of the spine and I'll take them through a little bit of breath. And more often than not, I will help them to do a little bit of releasing at that time. And then I tell them when they feel complete that they're more to open their eyes when they feel ready. And then usually I address, always open if you're willing. Does that mean, Leanne, that you would like a reading? Always open if you're willing. I've never had one actually, only what I've used for myself for personal use. So, yeah, I can do a reading for you in a few minutes. So, after we connect in that way, I will address what I felt. I'll address what I felt in my body. And what I begin to talk about, all of the teachings that I have learned and studied through yoga teacher trainings, through chakra psychology, through working with different spiritual teachers, and through different yogic and tarot and Reiki experiences, I'll begin to address whatever is going on. So I'll share a story with you. And I was doing the guided meditation with this young woman last weekend at the psychic fair. And after I opened my eyes, I asked her if she'd been in a car accident. And recently, the reason I asked that was I felt like my whole body was, I don't know if you've ever been in a car accident, but that feeling of just being locked, the whole back of the body completely locked up, like you can't move, you can't twist. And so she talked for a bit and she said no, she didn't think she had, maybe a little, maybe some few years ago. And then she goes, but I have scoliosis, and there's scoliosis that runs through my family. And I went, okay, all right, like, why didn't you say that right away? um, so that's just an example, the kind of thing that comes up. Sometimes people will be, they'll have issues with their braces and stuff, and my jaw or my teeth will start to ache. And so it's a really nice segue into the reading. And sometimes I am able to talk for half an hour, 45 minutes without even going to the cards. And then what I find is that the cards themselves, when I actually do pull cards, they confirm exactly what we've already talked about. And it's just really, really beautiful. So my readings are kind of different. And I don't just shuffle the cards and go away and start reading away. The other thing I think that's really important too is that you encourage the querent, encourage the client to come up with a question. And if they don't have a question, they probably do have a question. And so after I go through the guided meditation with them, I help them I say, well, how did you feel? How did it feel when I asked you to find a word to connect with your exhale breath? And is there something that you wanted to let go? Or if I feel that their right shoulder was all kind of heavy and weighty, I might talk to them about their responsibilities or different issues, or ask them, if they're carrying things that aren't really theirs and how their shoulders feel. And so I'll start a conversation with them, and then I'll ask them again, is there something in particular you would like to focus on today? And then I help them to formulate their question as best as they can. And sometimes that's not possible. Sometimes it's really hard for people to come up with a question. And so I come into this place of trust, and this work that I do, I really feel that I completely trust spirit. I believe that everything that comes out of my mouth is channeled, and that if I am drawing on meanings or references that I have gained from reading different books, then what that means is at that particular time for that reading, for that person, I need to refer to that. But sometimes I will find that the stuff that comes out of my mouth, I don't know where it comes from. And it can be a real kind of mishmash of things. And I'm sure if you've watched my videos, you've heard me say things like, if the So for example, let's just look at a card here with lots of symbols on it. So here's the Nine of Pentacles from this deck. Let's see, let's go there. Okay. And there's a lot of stuff going on in this Nine of Pentacles. And so, for example, I don't usually pay attention to that string of pearls, but perhaps the person sitting across the table from you is wearing a strand of pearls. And that strand of pearls might be connected to a story or to a family member, or that strand of pearls might weave its way in to why they're feeling like crap and have come for this reading in the first place. And so you find yourself talking about the pearls and talking about whatever that is connected to. And all of a sudden you'll find you're not really focusing on the Nine of Pentacles at all and what that represents. And so sometimes the cards will reveal something that you would never have found your way to if that particular image hadn't shown up on the card. So here's another example. I was doing a Lenormand reading for a customer who I knew quite well, and I tend to do Lenormand readings with people that I know or have done multiple readings for, because I find Lenormand readings can be quite frank and direct, and it is not something I usually go to if I don't know somebody, because often I find my questions even, or the things that I feel like saying are quite blunt when I'm doing that. So, so during that reading, there were certain cards that came up that were not traditional Lenormand readings at all. But there was certain symbols that connected with the person across the table. And she says, well, by the way, I've been offered a contract to write a book for da 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 da. And it was just made perfect sense with the symbols of, it was a 9 card Lenormand, I remember clearly. It was just made perfect sense with the way the cards had been placed on the table. And I would not have picked up on that. And so sometimes, even though in Lenormand we're supposed to read kind of pretty straight up, you read the pairs, you read the triplets, you read the diagonals, you read the lines and so forth. And in Lenormand, you're not supposed to stray too far from the, what you got on the table. But there was some reason in that moment that she connected with the images in a completely different way. And so then I was able to support her and to ask questions and to kind of redirect everything that I was saying. So yeah. Hi, Nina. Nice to see you. So that is about trusting what's going on with you as a reader. It's just really important to allow the, I think if you ask the person across the table, and this person might be yourself, if you're just reading for yourself, it might be, is there a card on the table that is drawing your attention? Is there a card on the table that's talking to you? And you can get them to share with you, kind of what's going on in that card. So here's another example. And this is kind of a very different Four of Wands. And I think when you have a card like this, and that fireplace might really speak to something for that person, and maybe they're kind of drawn to that image, and so I would allow myself, no, this is the textured tarot, this one, yeah, and then so I would allow myself to go that way. And if you can trust yourself, and if you can be in that place of trust and kind of really step out of your own way and just know that whatever comes through, whichever way the conversation goes, is exactly perfect for that situation. And then, the other advice I have for people is that, if you start doing readings and you are really relying on books and resources, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And so somebody asked, well, what if I have this particular set of three cards and I read it this way, and then in a year down the road, I read it completely differently? Well, that's how it works. Any particular set of three cards can have multiple interpretations. And in that moment, at that time, that is exactly how you were meant to interpret it. And a year down the road, that's how you were meant to interpret it. So you can't beat yourself up about thinking that you got it wrong last month or last week. So I think I'll leave that. And I want to talk about exercising your decks and learning to speak more fluently when you're reading. And I know somebody touched on this during the recent 24-hour thing that we had. Nina says, do you ever feel it appropriate to let or encourage the querent to choose the cards? So what I do is I clear the cards. I usually I bang them, or sometimes I'll smudge them. If I've got enough air in the room. If I'm in my little reading room at the store, sometimes it's not appropriate to have smoke. Sometimes I use a singing bowl, different ways. So I intentionally do clear the cards, and then I shuffle and I place them on the table, and then I ask the person across the table to cut the cards. That's usually what I do. And then after I have done, when it's coming time to close up the reading, to wind up the reading, I will choose an oracle deck that kind of matches with the tarot deck. And then I will either fan out the cards, or sometimes I just spread them all over the table, and then I get them to choose a card or cards. And so for the oracle deck, usually afterwards, yes, they choose the cards, but they definitely do cut the cards for the tarot reading. And you'll find people ask, well, do I cut it in 2? Do I cut it in 3? How do you want me to cut it? There's no right way. There's no wrong way. I did a lovely reading last weekend, and I had a young girl, I think she was 11, and she just kind of sat there, and she put the cards in multiple piles, and then she put them back together again, and then she rearranged them. And then finally she was done. And so then I know the card on the top is the most important card for her, and that's the message that she needs to hear. And her mom was sitting right beside us, and I was gazing at her across the table, speaking to her the whole time. And I can feel her mom's energy. Her mom is just in tears the whole time. And this beautiful little soul across the table is just, doesn't say anything, but I just feel this deep connection. So it's almost as if her mom needed the support to, her mom needed somebody else to dig deeper into something that she wasn't able to do. And so that was so beautiful. Nina says, I've only ever chosen the cards myself. No reason, just the way I've always done it. I'd like to start allowing the querent to do this. Yeah. The other thing also, so I also do a lot of teaching. So when I'm doing a workshop, one of the things I do is, and it sounds very, I don't know, motherly or anal or whatever you want to call it, I get every single person to go and wash their hands. And I tell them why. Because my cards are precious. You might have just put on hand lotion. You might have just filled up your gas tank, who knows what. And so even if they say they've just recently washed their hands, I get them to go and wash their hands, because I don't want their greasy, dirty hands all over my beautiful cards. So I do that, and I have no problem doing that. The same way, if somebody comes into their reading room or comes into a reading and I can tell they've just had a smoke, or they've just, I don't know, they've got a sticky Starbucks cup in their hands or something, I'll just say to them, do you mind just going and washing your hands, and then we'll start whenever you're ready. And I think, some people think that's kind of weird, but that's what I do because I like my decks. And from time to time, I'll go through every single card in a deck and I'll give it a little wipe because my cards get handled. And I think it was one of the decks with a black back. I think it was the 8 coins. The other day when I was at the store, I thought, man, these are gross. And so I gave them all, a wipe on both sides. So I look after my cards. I really I'm not what's the word, materially attached to them in a way, but they are expensive and they are a tool for my work, and so I look after them. Yeah. So I'm going to do, let's just check the time here. It's 45. I'm going to do, let's say, 2 readings, okay, tonight. And so I'm going to do a reading for Leann. Leann, are you still here? No, Leann, I don't have a regular practice. I don't have, nothing is regular about me. Sometimes I will start and I'll pull one oracle card because I'll feel this strong need to kind of find a theme, to find a topic, because this person needs some kind of confirmation. Or maybe when I did um, when I did the meditation with them, I didn't connect at all, and I felt this kind of wall. And sometimes there is a definite wall, like they don't want to let you in, and they can sit there with their arms crossed, folded, over their chest, and they don't want to talk. They don't want to share. They want you to prove yourself. And that can be really hard. So sometimes then I'll just get them to pull one oracle card and we'll start that way. Yeah. All right. Okay. So Leann, I would like you to just close your eyes and take a couple of deep breaths. And please know that if any of you are watching this and you relate to this reading for Leann or the content or whatever comes up in the reading, please know that this message is also for you as well too, because you are here, whether you are here tonight or you're here 2 years from now rewatching this video. That's how this works. Okay, this message is for you as well. Leann, feel your feet on the ground. And perhaps with your next inhale breath, curl up your toes. And then as you exhale, just relax your feet and encourage your whole body into relaxation. Take another deep breath. And then with your eyes closed, take your inner gaze to your eyebrow center and just formulate your question. What is the most important thing that you want to know tonight? Or if there is a particular topic, I don't want you to type it. I just want you to focus on how you're feeling, what's coming up for you. Another really good question, and I'm talking to all of you, is to think about, what have I forgotten? What is so outside of my realm of thinking right now that I just kind of need to reel it in and bring my awareness back. All right. And I will show you the cards. I'm going to probably draw 3 cards for Leann. So it's the 4 of Pentacles. And this 4 of Pentacles in this deck feels, well, I'm going to show it to you if you don't have this deck. This is the Textured Tarot by Lisa McLaughlin. I don't know if you have a piggy bank or your children have a piggy bank, or if you feel right now like you need to be counting your pennies. There's something around this energy. Maybe this is a time where you feel like you need to be a little more conservative with your money. you need to reel things in a little bit, that I want you to know that that's okay. When this card comes up, sometimes we feel, especially if we're a reader, it's like, ooh, I don't want that card. I don't want to be the miser. But sometimes this is just really smart. It's really smart to simplify and make things easier. And we're moving into this kind of really difficult season, a season where there is too much excessiveness, excessive everything. And so perhaps you have been contemplating this. Perhaps there's something about just the excessiveness of, thing from everything from the cost of the food you have to take to the staff party to, the gifts that you have to buy. Maybe there's something about buying a new outfit. Just really give yourself permission to wear your outfit from last year. You know, create a simpler dish. It doesn't have to have organic ingredients. There's something about really giving yourself permission to be okay with keeping things a little bit simpler. And the next card is a 7 of swords. So I want to ask you, if you really if you feel like somebody's taken something from you. Somebody's taken something from you that wasn't theirs to take, or they took it in a way that you feel a little bit violated. And maybe that's why this Four of Pentacles is coming up, is that you feel like this sense of protection around you and really need to be cautious in your material world. And with the 7 of swords and that sense of somebody taking something from you, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a material thing. It could very well be, um, you know, like um, like they stole an idea, or if it was at work, they yeah, I really want to go with that. Like you had you had an incentive to do something, and you, in trust, you shared something with somebody, but they kind of took it from you. And sometimes this is just really, really sucks. And so you feel like this need to kind of protect and insulate. And I want you to know at this time, this is exactly what you need to do. You need to insulate and to restore and to um, really look after yourself, your big capital S self. Oh, that's beautiful. The third card is the Empress. In a reading, the first card you pick up is always the most important. And so come back again and again and again and try your best to tie every single card into the first card. This is the Empress card in this deck. This is a collage deck. And so I'm looking at the roses. So here's an example of a card with a lot of different symbols in it. There's a bit of wheat coming out of the roses, but there's something about the roses. And so instead of buying a gift for yourself, and sort of buying a gift for others, I want you to buy a gift for yourself. I want you to buy some of your favorite flowers. I want you to do, and it doesn't have to be a whole expensive bouquet that's already arranged. Sometimes you go to the florist and they've got like a $60 bouquet sitting out in the vase at the front. Just go and buy one flower or two flowers. You don't have to buy the expensive bouquet. And so really kind of celebrate yourself and know that, the Empress is about her own resourcefulness, her own creativity, and there's this sense of abundance within and around and among her. So really just hold on to that, and to know that um, you're just going through a really bad patch right now. And bad is not the right word. I feel like this sense of needing to be insular and to protect yourself, it's almost like, I feel like if I drew a few more cards, we'll probably end up with like a 7 of wands as well too. But you are not feeling, it almost feels like you have oh, like the fire is burnt out a little bit. Like you're feeling a little burnt out. You don't have that. So the Seven of Wands is not here because you don't have that strength to like speak up for yourself. You don't have that strength to feel really defensive right now. You just kind of want to crawl into your little cave and get your blanket and put your slippers on, right, and disappear for the holidays. And I get that. The creativity. So yeah. So maybe bake some cookies. Go to if you have a recipe box or some recipe cards from your mom or your grandma, you might find some real comfort in doing some baking or something like that, from something from your family. So I hope some of this is resonating with you. Yeah, I just really encourage you to nourish yourself. Okay. I'm going to pull one oracle card. And so when I do this, and the reason I'm spending so much time with Leann, this is not just for Leann, this is for you as well too, just kind of seeing the process that I go through when I do a reading. So whether the reading has just 3 cards or it's a big 9-10 card reading, I do a lot of very, sorry, I don't know why I'm burping here, 9 cards, and I do it very kind of free, reading the rows, reading the corners and stuff like that. So as I'm shuffling this oracle deck, which is Soul Trees, and I'm looking at these cards here, there's a lot of pink and there's a lot of red. And so another thing, there's a couple things I want to say to Leann, and one is that, so weird. Like, so here's an example. I want to talk about the spleen. I want to talk about the spleen. Why? Right? I could have gone a lot of ways with red, but I want to encourage Leann to nourish her blood, to eat really healthy over the holidays, and to, like if beets aren't your thing, put some grated beets in your salad, like to nourish your blood, feed your blood, to really, maybe over the holidays, do some, go get a Reiki treatment or a massage or something like that. Your circulation, nourish your circulation. Don't allow yourself to get cold. Okay. And then, ooh, so here's her oracle card, Psychic Knowing. Hold it on the side. So this is about you trusting yourself and to not second guess the chatter, the mental chatter. So I talked about, being a little more insular over the holidays, to spend more time in quiet contemplation, maybe for a few minutes every morning and a few minutes before you go to bed, and to really begin to listen to that inner voice and do everything you can to just kind of quell that chatter. It's about trust and self-care. All right. All right, Stephanie, hi. Could you tell me anything about a job interview I have on Monday? Sure, I can do that. And that'll be it for demo readings for today. But yeah, sure, Stephanie, I can do that. Before I do Stephanie's reading, I want to share with you about a really good way to begin to learn to read faster, to read more intuitively. And this is something that is a lot of fun. And if you can do it in a public place with people watching you, so your kids, maybe your coworkers or anybody, it adds this kind of sense of pressure to actually do it. Of course, you can do it by yourself, but I would encourage you to do it with an audience, because then you're going to work harder at it. So the exercise is to shuffle your deck And you can do this. It's really fun to do it with a brand new deck that you've never used before, but of course you can do it with a well-worked, well-loved deck. And then what you're going to do is cut the cards, and you're going to start to do 3 card readings. And so you're going to very quickly, you're going to cut the cards and you're going to put down 1, 2, 3. And you're going to make a complete sentence and tell a story. Oh, wow, they're looking at each other. And oh, I wonder what he's saying to her. And you're going to kind of weave a little dialogue between those 3 cards. You have 30 seconds, 45 seconds to put something together. And then you're going to go bang, 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 next 3 cards. Bang, 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 next 3 cards. And it's really fun and it's really hard at the same time, but it is, it's a really nice way to practice reading faster and faster. Yeah. So I'm shuffling the Crow Tarot for Stephanie. And I had a couple different decks on my table here, but I think this is perfect for a work reading because I find the Crow Tarot is the energy of the ravens and the crows is really, really something. And I find it quite matter of fact, which I think is what you need in work reading. Yeah, speed tarot. It's fun and it's so good. It's so good for practicing. And you'll laugh and you can just, just allow whatever needs to rise. It's a big deck. I have a hard time shuffling this mound of cards. Ooh. Okay, so Stephanie, your turn. I want you to close your eyes. Feel your whole body from the crown of the head to the tips of your toes. Connect to your breath. And you're worried about this interview. You asked about the interview on Monday. Could you tell me anything about a job interview I have on Monday? Okay. And so what is it you're worried about? What part of this? Does this have to do with your self-confidence? Does it have to do with how other people see you? You know, and I really want you to take a moment to figure out what is really going on. You know, this is much more than, am I going to get this job? And I think that is the kind of thing that you really want to do a little bit of soul searching with over the next couple of days. Like spend some quiet time asking yourself these kinds of questions, all right? Okay, so I'm cutting the cards. Ooh, okay. I wanted to go here. Ooh, okay, so I've got the moon. So I'll pull 3 cards for you as well, too. And so these questions that I'm asking you are deep. Okay, so these are moon card kind of questions. And these are asking you about your insecurities. And why are you insecure? And what is coming to the surface about this job interview that's really making you feel this way? And I want you to go into these insecurities and to really be in them. Not make them something that you have to, oh yeah, I'm trying not to go into these old patterns, but I want you to go into these insecurities and to be in them and to journal about them and to explore them. And I want you to take a little bit of time over the weekend to really kind of allow yourself to feel uncomfortable, allow your feathers to be ruffled, okay? Quite literally, allow your feathers to be ruffled and ask yourself, is this something that you are ready to release? Or is it something you are ready to do a little differently? There's some pattern that's coming to the surface that is in the way of this job interview. Okay, so King of Pentacles. This is an awesome card to come up for a job interview. Really good card. So I see this as a reflection of your energy. And this is the kind of gentle giant kind of king. So allow this to reflect the way you dress for the interview, for the way you be in the interview. Go in as grounded as you possibly can be in every way. The way you prepare for the interview before you go that day, the way you dress, maybe the kind of questions that you will prepare. Like sometimes it's really good to have your own questions ready when you go into an interview. So really feel that sense of connection to the earth, that kind of connection to grounding. In that morning before you go to the interview, I want you to eat a really healthy breakfast and feel nourished. And that here's the King of Pentacles in the deck. I don't know if I showed you. Just looking at the apples there. So those apples are calling to me. Okay. And then we have the Knight of Wands. Ooh, okay. So those two energies are kind of conflicting, the King of Pentacles and the Knight of Wands energy. So that the King of Pentacles feels secure within themselves. So there's this preparation that you need to do for the interview to feel that sense of grounding and security. So wear clothes that you feel comfortable in. Don't wear new makeup. Don't wear new clothes. Wear clothes that you feel at home in. So when you go into the interview, you feel like you can take charge and you feel like you can be yourself. Okay. The trouble with the King of Pentacles is it can be a little bit stodgy. And so that's why this energy is coming up for the Knight of Wands. And so I asked you about these questions that you might want to prepare, or something that feels right. You want to balance that grounded, confident energy with a little bit of spark. Okay. So you might have something in your bag. You might have something in your bag of tricks. So let's kind of go think of lots of different things you could do. And please feel free if you have some ideas of how Leann, no, it's not Leann, it's Stephanie, can bring a little spark into this interview. Okay, so I'm going to go back to the Moon card. There's something from your past, something from your childhood, something from the way you always do things that is unnerving you. And I want you to spend time to really reflect on that. As you prepare for the interview, be comfortable. Really important to be comfortable and feel like you can take charge. But I don't want you to be too laid back. There's got to be something in the way that you approach the interview that is going to capture their interest, right? That's that spark of fire. So that might come from a question. That might be, an interesting object that you put on your object, that you put on your jacket. Like that might be an interesting pin. There might be some kind of conversation starter that is going to set you apart from the other candidates. So this feels like you need to do a little bit of preparation this weekend about not so much are you going to get the job, but what is your strategy for going into the interview? Does that make sense? So what I see the crows doing here is helping you to the best way to prepare for the interview. Okay, so not so much getting the information about the outcome, because if you take the time to do the preparation for the interview, everything will go exactly as you want it to go. Okay, so I'm shuffling here the Messenger Oracle, which is a beautiful oracle deck to work with here. I'm just considering what that spark, what that kind of, it's got to be something that doesn't feel put on. It can't feel fake. It's got to feel like it comes from your heart. That's what this King of Pentacles is coming back to, And then we all have those 16 court cards. Those those personalities are all within us. But for this interview, these are the two personalities that you need to let shine. Okay, so get out your journal tonight, get out your journal tomorrow, and really kind of embody these two energies. Yes, yes. So when I read the court cards, the and people always ask, how do you know if this is me or if this is people around me? But the people around you are reflecting the energy within you. Does that make sense? And so if the gentleman, you said maybe the man interviewing me will be serious and I'll have to prepare, like you said, to break the ice. Exactly. So he will be reflecting back something to help you make you feel comfortable, right? To make you feel like this. But yeah, exactly. So just think about that. And the thing about this card here is, if you have found yourself ever, like maybe you were in a speech contest, maybe you were at another interview, maybe there was some kind of a presentation where you were super nervous and you said something off the cuff that you totally regretted. Have you ever had that kind of experience? These cards are coming up so that it's almost as if you are going to script, or at least have a few different scenarios ready for the job interview. Okay. All right. And then here is your oracle card to kind of tie this all together. Okay. So this is an eagle. The keyword is freedom. Where I'm going with the eagle is big picture. Big picture. So as you I'm going to be very specific about the job interview. Okay, so the eagle and birds in general are looking at things from above. So they're looking at the scene from a much wider perspective than we normally look at things. So as you go through all of these things that I've said today, really take the time to step up and out and look at the big picture, and don't let the little things bother you. Okay, those little things are just stories. Those little things are just, they're not important. Okay, so this is about big picture stuff. And if we go to the keyword here, I kind of feel like that keyword is the result of you doing sufficient preparation for the interview. Okay, the freedom comes from you being prepared. And I hope that's helpful, because this feels very practical kind of information, not like letting you letting you know what the outcome of the interview is, which I don't really like to do. If there is an outcome, the outcome is freedom. So maybe that means that, and the King of Pentacles would reflect that as well too, that this is actually quite a well-paying job, and there's a sense of having more money than you expected or more money than you're used to. So both of those make sense to me as well too. Okay. All right, so there we are. I have one more thing I would like to say, and that is I'm going to come on again in the next couple of days, and I will be doing a giveaway for, I just passed 1,000 subscribers, so thank you to all of you. And I'll be coming on to I'll do 2 videos. The first video will be telling you what I'm going to give away and giving you instructions for how to sign up for that. And then a week later, or 10 days later, there'll be a draw. And so I hope that you will all join the draw. And I'm not sure what I'm going to give away. If you have any, I can't say if you have any requests. I mean, a lot of you watched a lot of my videos, so you know what kind of decks I have. And I'll probably be giving away at least a deck, because I do have duplicates of a couple of different decks, and probably one that I'm not using that much. I'm thinking that I might be giving away a copy of the Numinous. That is what's speaking to me at this time. And then also, I think I will give away a reading. So we can do a FaceTime or a Skype reading. And yeah, that feels like something I would like to do. So look for that live. And I might not do it live. I might just do, post a video. So thank you all very much for being here tonight. Um, a lot of you have been quiet in the background, and please know that that is great. And if you have any questions, if you have any requests, next week I will be back on again, and I will be looking at a couple of cards. If you have requests for specific cards that you would like me to discuss or to talk about, and I really want to weave these Thursday night chats between reading intuitively and knowing when to bring in traditional meanings and when to kind of listen to something else or listen to your inner voice, because I think that is the art of reading tarot. So thank you all for being here, and namaste. Enjoy your evening wherever you are, whatever time zone you're in. Enjoy the rest of your day. Bye for now.